This is 2 Minutes Together, a ministry of Central Lutheran Church, Eugene, Oregon. I'm Pastor Ben. This week, we enter into the season of Lent. Our epistle reading coming up for this Sunday is Paul writing to the Romans, talking about how sin entered this world. However, we frequently talk in Lent about sin and sinfulness, and people could be left to be feeling very guilty and feel oppressed by some of those challenges. But if you look more carefully at what Paul says, there's another way to possibly think about this. Paul doesn't talk about the sinfulness on its own, but he says sin, and from sin came death. Paul does and can talk about human sinfulness just on its own, but usually what Paul's especially interested in is the problem of death. He wants to recognize the reality of where humans are in the world. When Paul talks about the present evil age, where we live in the here and now, it's less about all the bad things people are doing, but instead far more how this evil age affects us. Sinfulness being not only just bad things I'm doing, but the bad things done generally that affect me. What we would call these days structural evil or corporate evil. Paul understood that, and it all came home here with this concept of death. The place where we recognize we are humans and we are not God, but that instead we will die. And then Paul says, here is the true grace of God, that the power of death in this world has been once and for all conquered by Christ, by the incarnation of who Jesus is in our lives. For Paul, this is what he talks about when he's talking about sin and sinfulness. How Christ makes you alive rather than living in the age of death and pain. And while we live in this present age, we continue to suffer and we continue to be in a place of pain. There is always the grace and hope and love of God alive for you in who Christ is today. This is 2 Minutes Together. I'm Pastor Ben.